Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Watches and Style channel. This is your host, Young Brando, live from Los Angeles. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope at least some of you had a chance to check out last night's show, which was on Bond's watches, which was on Bond watches. Um, a lot of the timepieces that have ever been worn by the 007 were covered with sprinkling, especially towards the end, of a consideration of his style through the movies, as portrayed by Sean Connery, George Lazenby, Roger Moore, Timothy Dalton, Pierce Brosnan, and of course, last but not least, Daniel Craig. So if you want to check that out, I'm going to drop the link in the chat and feel free to do it um, on your own time soon enough. Feel free to drop a like, feel free to share the link, and also drop a comment and let me know what you like. One of the questions that we brought up when talking about Bond watches was also a little forward looking, considering a hypothetical situation where there would be a new endorsement, where there would be a new product placement, where the new Bond would be wearing a new watch. And there were a few interesting suggestions, including the suggestion that you should go back, in fact, to wear no date sub, possibly in the form of 5513, which was, of course, worn by both Lazenby and Roger Moore. There was a more provocative suggestion, perhaps, by I Heart Maldives, who suggested that he should go with the Nautilus travel time chronograph, travel time flyback chronograph 5990A, stainless steel on the matching bracelet. So check it out. Feel free to drop a comment. I thought I would do a little episode tonight with like a loose focus on some of the new releases from AP that I didn't have time to cover because I didn't really have a lot of regular live streams over the last few weeks. But there are a couple of new releases, a couple of new variations of some of the familiar and fan favorite designs in the catalog. So let's check them out and try to see how we do. Ali Reza, thank you so much. Also a member of the channel and always a great conversationalist, great interlocutor, and an amazing supporter and friend. Have a good show, buddy. I'll catch the replay, but this is a topic I'm keen on for sure. Brutalist for the win. Of course, in a way, all the releases, all the watches that we will consider today are examples of brutalist design, you might say. Now, let's start with perhaps what has proven most controversial, which is the remaster 02. Let's pop that up. Where do I have this open? Now, this is a piece that existed as model 5159, a piece that was made in rather limited numbers in the 60s. which of course speaks to the limited nature of this particular release 2, which is the reference 5159, which is remastered to a reiteration of the reference 5159 BA. Now, I was unfortunately a little forgetful, so I didn't get a screen capture of this, but Horology Ancien on Instagram had actually gone to try some of these novelties, and he had some great pictures, but I think they are already gone, unfortunately. But one of the complaints about this particular piece was specifically that it was way too large. And I had guessed that because, unlike the original, which had a 27.5 millimeter diameter, so very dainty dress watch proportions, for a piece that was made only in 7 examples, you are jumping up all the way to 41 millimeter in diameter. This is a relatively fine watch, less than 10 millimeters thick. So one would assume that it would wear well enough and snug to the wrist, but still it looked out of all proportion in a way. Of course, there are a few attractive things about the watch that might still make it quite popular with at least some collectors of the brand. It is, to my knowledge, only the second model to feature the new precious metal alloy that AP has introduced, sand gold, so to speak. Very similar, I would say, to what Chanel has in beige gold. It's kind of like a subtle approach to the precious metal, kind of perhaps an example of quote unquote quiet luxury, which has been a very strong trend that has picked up through the pandemic, but certainly came to a head with the popularity of the TV series Succession and the outfits that were chosen and then chosen for the Roy family and then replicated by others. But after the Flying Tourbillon Openworked Royal Oak piece, the reference 26735 SG, this Remaster 02 is only the second watch, again, correct me if I'm wrong, to feature this new shade of gold that AP now purveys. The other thing to note about the Remaster series is the fact that it is always limited. So that might be a point of attraction for some collectors. The price point is set at 47,200, which, for a precious metal AP doesn't really strike you as that outrageous. Limited edition of 250 examples. I was puzzled for this release for a number of reasons. Because in both cases, there was an earlier remaster version that was introduced in 2020. And it is a piece that I really like, but I also couldn't really make sense of in terms of AP's own line of watches. The reason I'm saying this is the very existence of the remaster series finds its origin in the opening of what they call the Musée Atelier, right? The new Audemars Piguet Museum that was opened in 2020, the year of release for this earlier remaster, which is kind of the centerpiece of the manufacture as well. The exhibition kind of surrounds a complications workshop. The whole architecture, the whole layout really tries to drive home the idea that AP is at once the custodian of the best of the best of the Vallée du Joux watchmaking tradition, the famous Swiss valley that's been the heartland for watchmaking for centuries now, but also the idea that they are constantly working on technical innovation, right? Hence, having the exhibition kind of surround and in a way allow the visitor to survey watchmakers working on complicated watches in real time on contemporary pieces to boot. So in a way, I have to say I'm kind of disappointed about how they are handling these series. This was a remake of a two-tone chronograph, again, that was made in choice numbers in the past. That first remaster was itself a limited edition of 500 pieces, I want to say. And it was released more or less concurrently with the opening of the new museum in the manufacture. Here's a shot from the Hodinkee article that was released, or that was published rather, at the time of the release. And this is the original 40s piece on which the remaster was based. And again, the main concern was the only modernization they did basically was to bloat up the case size, bring it all the way up to 41 millimeters. And of course, to give it a self-winding movement, which I think makes much more sense in terms of, again, in terms of the marketing shtick, in terms of the very reason that they had for this, for the existence of this series. But 41 millimeters for a chronograph, even when it's vintage inspired, was not actually so bad. Again, you know, my dainty wrists couldn't quite take it, but I think it could wear really well on, you know, anyone who has at least a 7-inch wrist. And it does have a very unique aesthetic, not only when it comes to a vintage inspired, not only when it comes to an AP watch, but also in terms of a vintage inspired chronograph as well. It's more the aesthetic is more akin to what you would see from the neo-vintage era especially, but even from the contemporary catalog from a brand like Vacheron Constantin rather than today's AP. So it's a very interesting watch. I think it does offer some sort of value still on the secondary market. At least that was the case last time I checked. Let me take another look. It's a mix of stainless steel and pink gold. And I think the fact that they came out with only 250 examples of the new remaster is part of a lesson learned with the release of this particular piece, because it was, in fact, released in 500 examples for, I think, for a list price that was around $55,000. You can basically get it for half that today, which, again, doesn't really bode well for this kind of limited edition piece that's supposed to be, something very unique and very, very special indeed. So in a way, I expect something similar to happen possibly with this watch too, with the Remaster 2 as well. Because in and of itself, I don't expect the sand gold material to lead people into this kind of piece. I tend to believe that these kinds of distinct designs, these kinds of design watches, have such a strong wrist presence in the, to begin with, and they're supposed to be more more in the category of statement pieces, that they don't need to be this big as well. I wish, again, I saved that picture because it looked positively ginormous. But since this is 250 pieces, and since a lot of people are desperate to get on the good graces of AP boutiques and houses and whatever other kind of exclusive access that the brand nowadays gives you, I'm guessing it will sell out, but you will probably find it well under the retail price not long after the fact. But all of this makes me really question the need for the existence of this kind of series, right? Why does the Remaster exist, especially if it is something that they're gonna be picking up on every 4 or 5 years as they have done, especially if most of their innovation will consist in bloating up the case size, in expanding the case. Of course, to play the devil's advocate, the first one, the self-winding chronograph, took a vintage-inspired design and outfitted it with a modern self-winding chronograph movement. This one, again, has a self-winding movement, brings a very unique design that you can barely find anywhere else in terms of similar pieces. Of course, the kind of resurgence of King Midas of Rolex comes to mind. The new Toledano and Chan limited edition watch that was sold through Hodinkee comes to mind as a piece of design that was itself inspired by a piece of brutalist architecture. So I appreciate the unique design, but again, having played around with the idea of uniquely shaped dress watches, I feel they need to be smaller. And you will know exactly what I mean if you tried on a design by the famous Gilbert Albert, or if you had a chance to try on a Cartier Crash for size, right? Whether you hate it or like it, the design itself is so distinctive, so out of the box for a wristwatch that it can only be tolerated in small doses. So once you bloat it up, it would be it becomes rather unbearable. I think MCM agrees with that. Great design in similar case size, which was the original, right? The 5159, I think, BA. And I think that would be a very cool watch indeed. And yeah, like, with all the focus, all the resurgent focus in AP's marketing strategies, where they try to dedicate more of their catalog to watches made for women, to timepieces that are at least directed, marketed towards women, designed to have more of a feminine appeal. Something like this in a more conservative sizing could have made a great dress watch that would perhaps have a little more of a feminine appeal, but could be also thought as a unisex piece of sorts, as MCM is saying. Is Tim G here yet? Tim G, Tim G sometimes does write in the chat, but he usually leaves a comment, which is something that I really appreciate, because that helps with the exposure. That does help with the algorithm. So once the live stream ends, feel free to hit the like button and once the live stream ends, feel free to add a comment of your own, a question, a nasty remark. Anything and everything is welcome. And until then, please do hit the like button. That helps a great deal. And if you are somehow chancing upon the channel, if you somehow randomly saw this particular live stream, please feel free to subscribe. I have watch content on this channel and on my Instagram, which you can see at my handle, at young.brando. I have watch content on a daily basis, so I'm sure you'll find something you will enjoy, something that you can learn from. And if you would share the link with your friends, with other collectors and watch enthusiasts, it would be much, much appreciated. So let me post this link to Twitter as well. Why not? Nate Dogg, thank you so much. Thank you so much. 199. When was the last successful AP dress watch line? Honestly, I'm tempted to say never. But it really depends on how you measure success. Because if you ask me, in terms of my taste in dress watches, a lot of the classic perpetual calendars, for example, for AP, make for great dress watches, and they're almost all the way down to 15,000 on the secondary market. Let me see. That wasn't a particularly great example. Those are the cases that later on became an inspiration for the Jules Audemars line, which also had moderate success in its variations. But this is a 36 millimeter case with a stepped bezel. Here in white gold, here in yellow gold, but the watch also has white gold examples and more rarely platinum versions. A lot of dial variations as well, some of which have interesting finishes or exciting colors, like a clover design that's puts the 4 subdials or the calendrical indications into sharp relief. But overall, this is a great dress watch, right? Whether and it can be, I think, these ultra thin perpetual calendars that AP reliably had through the I think late 70s, 80s, really kept the company afloat, or that's what I had always heard. I think I want to say the first version of these pieces were released probably as the reference 5548, I want to say, with the 2 5548 soon to follow. And that should be at the end of the 70s, late 70s. But variations of these, which are, I think, veritable dress watches, were, for a company of AP size at the time, especially through the late 70s, 80s, and later 90s, they were quite successful. I think when they existed, the 2 lines, Jules Audemars and Edouard Piguet, named after the eponymous founders of the brand, Audemars Piguet, were also successful. Obviously not successful enough to guarantee their continuation, right? There's a reason they're no longer there. Millenary, of course, that was conceived around the millennium, didn't really have a long-lasting appeal. That was very much a divisive shape, segmenting design, so to speak. I'm a huge fan of the Art Deco lines of the Edouard Piguet, however. Right, if you like rectangular watches, these are amazing. There's also a version of this with a perpetual calendar, which, by the way, Nate Dogg, you have your finger on the pulse there with tracking down a Moza Perpetual 1, because they are an incredible bargain and one of the best movements in the game as well when it comes to the Perpetual. Yeah, these are great. And you can find these for about 20K or so. Again, beautiful, curved, rectangular, Art Deco inspired dress watch with some interest on the dial, both in terms of the pattern and the Breguet numerals. Quite balanced for all the information it conveys, visually speaking. The only gripe you might have with the watch, if you're a true purist, for better or worse, is that it is fitted with a round caliber in a rectangular case, right? So if you really want to nitpick, which is something I love doing on this channel, as you guys know, that can be listed as a minor gripe. That can be listed as kind of a complaint about this watch. But hey, at least they put a nice frame around it with beautiful engravings. This, by the way, is 25911 BC. That's the reference number. Bezels, by the way, also someone who has his YouTube channel. I will drop the link to Basil's channel. He gifted a membership. I will see where it has gone. There we go. This is his. Nate Dogg says, I'm Israel Chai. Indeed, he got the membership as well. Thank you so much, Basil, for gifting that, and great catch, Nate Dogg. And thank you for using these beautiful emojis as members. I'm sure, yeah, I should go and commission more of them. Dark Child says, I really love that. It's a great dress watch. Yeah, I think these are underrated. But, you know, I think Nate Dogg asked a rhetorical question there. In the sense, like, you know, hey, when was the last time AP had a successful dress watch? And you really need to go back to the late 70s and 80s for those ultra thin perpetual calendars that I was showing earlier, specifically in the example of the 25657 BA that we had here. I think that's a fantastic piece. Of course, it doesn't have a lot of bells and whistles. It has a closed case back. Um, it's very traditionally sized for a dress watch. So if you're looking for something a little more oversized or at least contemporary, it might not scratch the itch in that way. But then again, it was, in fact, a solid commercial success for a brand of AP size. I forget the year on this all the time, but I think it was like 2018. I think it took AP well into the 21st century to hit the 1 million watch mark. I think it was in year 2018 when AP, from its beginnings until then, made 1 million watches, right? Which is roughly at that time, which was what Rolex makes per year, right? So what is commercially successful for AP is a very different genre. It's a very different question than what is commercially successful for Rolex. By the way, speaking of modern dress watches, this kind of dropped on my desk earlier today. My God. This is the Moza Endeavor Center Seconds. It's the year of the 50th United Arab Emirates. I think it was last year was the 50th anniversary of the Emirates, and they commissioned a bunch of watches for the occasion, of course. And this was one of them. I haven't yet had the time to delve into it, look into it, and see what, how many of them were made, etc. However, it is really a stunning watch, and the Moza Endeavor, or the Pioneer for that matter, does certainly fit the bill when it comes to a more modern dress watch, something that is a little more oversized, but not excessively so. And I think 40 millimeters for a dress watch, for me, from my point of view, is pushing it. But for those who have a significantly bigger wrist than mine, and for those who like wearing watches that are 42, 44, 47 millimeters in diameter, this could be something like 40, might even look dainty in a way. I found it, by the way, it's a limited run of 20 pieces, and it has a stainless steel case and this ruby dial, which is really stunningly beautiful. It kind of looks like it looks like a nebula. Really beautiful. I mean, people have milked the hell out of aventurine and similar materials and aesthetics in terms of that copper gold aesthetic, but I have rarely seen something like this given full effect. So I really, really appreciated it. And there are a number of examples that came up once I looked a little bit into it on Chrono 24, with prices around 27, 30,000 mark. Patek Chris says, I don't appreciate Mose. I would love to hear more. You know, pros and cons. It's always good to have a balanced look on these things. Did you see the photo on Horology Ancien's story of a group wrist shot and Recep Recepi was wearing a green crystal Milgauss? Yes, I've just shown it, although admittedly I passed over it without comments, but we can most certainly take a close look. He himself, Horology Ancienne, is wearing Vacheron Constantin triple calendar. I think it's a cabinotier watch, so kind of a bespoke version of it, so to speak. The dad of the account is wearing their unique minute repeater from Patek. Everyone's favorite, I think, watch banter and serious research accounts. King Flum is wearing Chronomètre Bleu, which I think is his daily driver. And then this apparently is Recep Recepi with Rolex Milgauss. And I think it's the black dial. Z Blue would have been much more distinct, but you can most certainly see the green tints of that crystal. Thanks for the reminder. Recep Recepi is certainly not only on my Mount Rushmore of independent watchmakers, but also top 3 Swiss Kosovars as well, along with Granit Xhaka and Xherdan Shaqiri, the 2 football players who unfortunately both went out against England a couple of days before. Nate Dogg says earlier, it's interesting to see how the Holy Trinity has diverged. AP is a single watch line company with the Royal Oak. Vacheron Constantin has overseas, and then the historique varieties. Yeah, I think, speaking of which, King Flum was saying that Vacheron should have leveraged the kind of pandemic era popularity they had gained, mostly on the wave, no pun intended, of the overseas. But admittedly, and this is not at the level of, investment or value retention questions, but admittedly, a lot of watches from their historic line, whether we are talking about the American 1921, which somehow makes it to everyone's, top dress watches lists, including mine. The chronograph, of course, still building on the legacy of that classic Lemania base with the Corne de Vache design is also very popular. And I think for that reason, I mean, the 222, of course, in a way, fully took advantage of the hype around the overseas and around Vacheron Constantin's luxury sports watch hype, but of course, in so many ways, transcended that hype. That also belongs to the historic line, at least nominally speaking. So Nate Dogg says, but Patek has the only full rounded collection. I agree with that on the overall. I mean, I have very little interest in what that collection offers today, right now, as we speak. Uh, but you're right. I think Patek's only foibles comes from those instances where they are trying too hard to appeal to a so-called youthful collector. Um, I think they really embarrass themselves when they try to make watches, that are supposed to look sporty, but come from the traditionally dressy lines, like the Calatrava. I think the pilot's watches are a mess. Um, I'm also not a fan of all those carbon fiber inspired Calatrava dials, nor the asphalt looking ones. But again, I digress. You do have a solid point there that overall, as a whole catalog, right? And that would be also a kind of a music analogy as well. AP is a one-hit wonder. Vacheron Constantin seems to have an appeal that's a little bit beyond the overseas and the 222, but we will see if they will sustain them. But they were also always the quirky one among that three, among those heritage makers, with their unique flair and more original designs. I think there will always be a place for Vacheron Constantin. But as you said earlier, in the watch hangouts, um, it's not reasonable to expect these kinds of brands to sell above retail anyways. By the way, I sometimes assume, when I mention the watch hangout, that you would all be subscribed already. But if you are not, please do that. I dropped the link right there. Nate Dogg, about the earlier 50th UAE limited edition watch, says that stone dial is insane. I've been tracking it on eBay for weeks. Yeah, it came across my desk, so to speak, just earlier today, and I've been obsessed with it for the last few hours. Just catching up. Nate Dogg comes to Mosa's defense. Mosa perpetual calendars in precious metal for around 25K. Mosa big dates in precious metals from 10, 15K. The movements are stunning. The dials are beautiful, fully vertically integrated manufacture. I take the liberty to fix that. I'm guessing that's what you meant. Making 3K watches a year max. That's like Lange sized, very rare, as their slogan is accurate. I think Lange makes more than 3K. Lange should be around 6K. I wonder how Mosa will leverage their newfound popularity or desirability, perhaps, connected to this sponsorship of the Alpine Formula One team. Because again, I don't expect them to suddenly become a hype brand or something, don't take me wrong, but Formula One increasingly is very popular. Of course, the Drive to Survive documentaries did a lot of important work when it comes to that. Um, the fact that there are now 3 tracks in the US is immense, because the North American market, both in and of itself and as an attraction to tourists from all around the world, is immense. It's very important. And now there's that very shrewdly named F1 movie coming out as well, with Brad Pitt, I think, as the main protagonist. So that will, I'm assuming, only increase the popularity of the sport in a more mainstream level. Yeah, so that's Alpine collaboration, I'm assuming, will very much be something of a boost for Moza. And they have most certainly been milking it online. I don't expect it, again, I don't necessarily expect it to affect their value on the secondary market, at least not immediately. But I think it's a very smart move to partner with a team that has a lower profile but a very distinct identity as well. The fact that they placed their logo in the front of the helmet, like at the temple of the helmet, I think is huge. And of course, both Pierre Gasly and Esteban Ocon are wearing the watches, wearing various models from the Streamliner range. Of course, Ocon won't be part of the team next year. I don't know if they signed a second driver just yet, but Pierre Gasly is staying on. Yeah, but I mean, I wonder what's going to come out of this collaboration. I wonder what's going to, how it's going to affect Moza in short to midterm. MCM adds to Nate Dogg's positive estimation of Moza as a brand. Great executive team, the Milan brothers, and customer service. I'm a big fan. And for Vacheron Constantin, Nate Dogg says, the historic 1942 in steel should have been pushed hard rather than the 56. The price points were close enough that they didn't need 56 as an entry watch. Yeah, look, I don't want to necessarily put on my cap. It's not like I'm submitting my resume to become their new CEO or something. And there has been a recent shuffle at the level of executives in Richemont, of course, which you may have heard about or you may have read somewhere. But I always felt that there is something about keeping things consistent, reliable, and across the line, right? So the fact that they have some examples of the 56 line that don't have the Geneva seal, which Vacheron's watches still proudly carry, and it gives them a certain distinction, right, over and against a lot of their direct competitors. Again, we don't need to nitpick about what it actually means and whether it makes a difference, whether actual high quality movement finishing, assembly, and regulation even needs such a certification. Those are all separate conversations. As branding components, I think it is something that distinguishes Vacheron, and it is something they should, I think, keep consistently all across the catalog. I don't think they need to have these Val powered 56 watches. They might not need to nix the entire line, but at least keep it consistent, keep it all with the Geneva seal. But yeah, I like the 42. I'm not a huge fan of the triple calendar necessarily as a complication on its own, but I think this is a cool watch, and I like the unique font of the numerals. But again, maybe it was too distinctive, too different looking for them to endorse as a. Yeah, I think maybe it's too distinctive of a design with those teardrop lugs compared to a lot of pieces from 56, which have very traditional, kind of slightly elongated round case designs, a lot less divisive, I have to say, in terms, from a design perspective. Oh, that was a nice digression, guys. Thank you for giving me some pointers. Thank you for giving me some topics to dissect, some interesting points to elaborate on. I love it. Dr. Bob says, I'm on a YT timeout for 24 hours for being naughty. I can only leave comments as sleepy G-Shock fan. Oh yeah, I recognize that. You have, that's why you were asking earlier about Tim G. That's great. Apparently YouTube gets upset if you talk about Macron's wife. What did you say about Macron's wife? Basil Bezels comes with the jokes earlier. Jules Audemars, more like Stool Audemars. That's great. Dark Child, thanks for subscribing to the channel, to Basil's channel, I think in that case. Appreciate it. Appreciate your support for another community member. Now we are circled back to AP. They have released basically three 23 millimeter varieties of the Royal Oak. These are very much directed towards the woman collector, towards a feminine client. I mean, obviously, I won't hold it against someone, I won't hold it against a man to wear for one reason or another, whether as, for the shock and awe, or for their personal taste to wear a 23 millimeter watch. But as much as I have interacted with similar designs in the past, because remember, the Royal Oak 2 that was actually designed by Jacqueline Dimier was not only the first woman's version for the Royal Oak, but it was also the first variation. When it came out in 1976, it was quartz powered. And I think sorry, the new one is quartz powered. The original Royal Oak 2, the model or the reference 8638, when it was first introduced, had actually self-winding movements. Later on, these kinds of models through the 80s were in fact replaced by quartz-powered versions. Of course, the 8638s that Jacqueline Dimier designed, first and feminine variation of the Royal Oak, was 29 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken. These new mini Royal Oaks are 23. They come in the 3 shades of gold: white, yellow, and pink. And they're all quartz powered, which I completely understand, right? At that case size, in that diameter, I think it would be perhaps prohibitively expensive to produce a self-winding or even a hand mount movement. I'm not expecting them to do something like that. And I think that being said, of course, the price point is right around the same range with the new Jumbo with 16202, which I think is now 35,000 US dollars. And of course, it's not only the kind of small aesthetics, but also the design, or rather the expression, that is kind of a throwback to the legacy of woman designers for the brand as well. After all, these are all with that distinct, quote unquote, Florentine, Carolina Bucci, frosted gold finish, which they use, I think, very effectively, in contrast with some mirror polished surfaces and accents. So I think the watches are really, really extremely appealing. I'm gonna hopefully find a way to actually see them in person soon enough, and I will report when that happens. MCM, $20. Thank you so much. A little bit of support for the Watch Talk. That's a lot of support, actually, and I really, really do appreciate it. Let me know, guys, what you think about these mini Royal Oaks. I actually like it. I think it is something that should exist in the catalog. I am in full support of this. You remember, if you are a regular listener to this show, if you do tune into these live streams more often than not, we had many conversations earlier about the exclusivity of the AP experience today, the access that is even granted to boutiques, the kind of exclusivity that the brand is trying to propound in terms of really restricting their supply nowadays to their boutiques and houses, which have been mushrooming all over the world. But we have also specifically talked about, and that was through an anecdote that our friend Swiss has shared regarding his recent purchase of a 37 millimeter Royal Oak in the form of the 555 reference 15550 ST with the ice blue dial. He was told that he should consider himself very lucky indeed to have been allocated a piece like that because he was told by the boutique representatives at the time that such models, the 37 millimeter reference specifically, if not necessarily this particular the dial color, was going to be henceforth allocated to women, to female customers. Now, I don't know whether that is, really written policy, something that sales associates and boutique representatives are actually taught and told in training, or is it something like an unspoken rule that is simply been understood? But rather than having such arbitrary rules around allocation based on minute differences in case sizes, I would rather have distinct variations all over the catalog, all the way down to 23 millimeters, so that people would naturally be inclined to go for what they like better, what fits their wrist best, and what actually complements their lifestyle. I think that's what I will say. I'm guessing this is Gildan. Sorry if it's Gildan and I'm mispronouncing it. I do apologize. For the quartz movements, look, I mean, if you ask me, of course, in an ideal world, I think even the mini Royal Oak should have a mechanical movement. And why not? Right? If there is the kind of expertise for supplying, for providing, even in a serial production watch, that sort of mechanical movement, that expertise is more than available in the Valley. It is more than accessible to a heritage brand like AP. But then again, $34,000 is already a very salty price tag for a mini watch. Again, I don't think today's lineup has a lady president, right? In Rolex, but they used to have these all gold Datejusts combined with president's bracelets, a lot of times with jam sets, bezels and dials. I think in that case, the case diameter was maybe 31. I don't think they were priced at this range either. I was simply saying that probably if AP had a Royal Oak Mini in the 23 millimeter case size, and if they either had to conceive a new mechanical movement from scratch or repurpose and serially produce something that they might actually have in their archives in terms of mechanical movement that would fit a case of this mini size, I would say that price point would very quickly jump to $40,000, $45,000, $50,000. And that would possibly defeat the purpose of this watch even existing in the catalog. Right? I think it's not a coincidence that the watch is priced right below a stainless steel Royal Oak Jumbo. Right? I don't think that's a price point they came up with arbitrarily. I don't think that's something they bumped into by chance. So that the movements must have played a part in terms of that. Yeah, look, I don't know if it is a $200 movement. I mean, AP has had a decent legacy of having used quartz movements in their watches. I don't think they had any exceptional problems. Battery leakage only happens when you leave a quartz-powered watch sitting in a drawer without removing the battery. It doesn't just happen for no reason. And any other movement malfunction, they should be able to cover, and they should be able to also get ahead of, just like the mechanical calibers that they use in the rest of their range. And Jilden, I mean, if you're saying even Breguet uses tiny hand one, I mean, it's not even Breguet. Brands like Breguet and Jaeger-LeCoultre actually have an entire legacy in having made women's watches with movements that have been either completely conceived by them, that's JLC's case, or at least made in collaboration with, in that case, Lemania, of course, which ultimately was in fact integrated to today's Breguet manufacture. So arguably, when it comes to micro-sized mechanical movements, Breguet and Jaeger-LeCoultre have possibly more resources in-house compared to AP, which, I mean, if you didn't know, to this day, they outsource a lot of their movements, right? The 37 millimeter Royal Oak that we were just talking about, the 15520, the self-mining movement in this piece actually comes from Vaucher, the movement maker in Fleurier that is part of the Sandoz Family Foundation / Parmigiani ecosystem. So yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy to make a mechanical movement for a very small watch. And it certainly is costly. I'm not saying it would be impossible for them, but it would possibly significantly drive up the price point of the watch. Now, the next group of watches that I want to talk about is, again, not altogether a new release. I think the Remaster 2, that's limited edition brutalist watch design that was released in a run of 500 pieces, which had some redeeming aspects, but I think is altogether too big. That was arguably something new. Of course, it was based on a late 60s model that had just about a little more than half a dozen examples. Mini Royal Oak, again, Nate Dogg's criticism is well taken. AP is the Royal Oak brand. That being said, distinctly small, minuscule, miniature, diminutive Royal Oak, as in the 23 millimeter integrated bracelet version, that wasn't something that really existed in the catalog. So that was something new. Here we are talking about variations on a theme. Honestly, of course, the Royal Oak Royal Oak Jumbo is kind of the crown jewel when it comes to all the different variations. But that being said, the double balance Openworked, ever since it came out, especially in the 41 millimeter case size, as it is represented by the reference number 15407, has been immensely popular. Of course, AP has a relatively steady and long-standing legacy in making skeletonized pieces, openworked dials. But I think double balance openworked, the popularity of the double balance wheel openworked also owes something to a very contemporary take on that design that also lays bare something that is perhaps, in fact, worth seeing, right? Because it actually combines a second balance wheel and balance spring assembly on the same axis as the first one, as the main one, you might say, which kind of acts as a regulatory mechanism of sorts, stabilizing and improving the precision of the timepiece. Of course, the aesthetics is also distinguished from your quote-unquote run-of-the-mill Royal Oak as well, not only by the Openworked dial, but also, I mean, vis-a-vis the Jumbo, also by the absence of course, any date indicator or exposed date wheel, which in the past, not in the current version, admittedly, was at least sometimes parts of the Jumbo Openworked. And of course, there's a centrally deployed sweep center second sand. There is a sweep center second sand. So the 15407 has been really popular. Of course, there are examples of the double balance wheel openworked in smaller case sizes as well. I think the reference number for the 37 millimeter is maybe 15466, I want to say, or 67. Oh, I think it's even 15466 or 67. Or I might be kind of getting a little bit confused with some of the variations in terms of the finishing of the material and the addition of the rainbow bezel, gem set, whatever. So forget it. Let's roll the tape back and continue talking about the 15407 and the variations that have just come out. Speaking of which, we were just looking at Horology Ancien's Instagram account and specifically his take on some of the new AP releases. Again, I didn't do any screen captures. I should have. He has tried these on as well, except for the black ceramic version, actually. And he was complaining a little bit about the way that AP is milking this particular reference, this particular aesthetic of the double balance wheel openworked, because there are too many variations. And when there are too many variations of a model, no matter how limited the production is in terms of the numbers, that might take away just a tiny bit from the collectability, from the worth of those watches as collectibles. Jilden, thank you so much for that super sticker, $3. Thank you so much. He was saying earlier, AP hit a home run with the 34 millimeter Carolina Bucci. Yeah, that like petrol dial one, that chameleon-like version, the black ceramic one, that was amazing. Oh my God. That was also a limited edition, by the way. That was one of the most stunning watches that they have made in recent past. 77 350 CE in this particular version with a dial that was designed by Carolina Bucci. First of all, I think those pink gold details, both in terms of the hexagonal bolts on the octagonal bezel, as well as the dial fixtures, dial furniture, not to mention the hands, complement the black ceramic case beautifully in either case. But that dial especially is very, very special. It has a very urban feel. It has like a kind of a quasi-futuristic feel as well, like, you know, as if it's like an electro chip. Carolina Bucci describes her own inspiration as something much more inspired by the urban setting, kind of like the little bit of oil spilled in a puddle, you know, in like a potted asphalt, where you get that sort of a rainbow like reflection of colors. But yeah, 77 350 CE in this limited run of 300 pieces was an absolute killer piece. I would wear the shit out of something like this. And again, may have been more squarely targeted for our better halves, so to speak. But yeah, I would certainly rock 33, 34 millimeter Royal Oak any day. The 56 175 is also a great reference when it comes to that. Also quartz powered, and great in that first collaboration with Nick Faldo, the championship, that combines tantalum case and bracelets with stainless steel interlinks, as well as the bezel. CloudCan says 3 things, actually. I wanna highlight them. It's like, if Rolex comes out with a mini Daytona, this was for the mini Royal Oak, typical AP, and Patek only have 1 or 2 decent models, milking it ad infinitum. I can't really disagree, especially when it comes to AP. But Patek is guilty of milking the Aquanaut and the Nautilus in so many different ways as well. I mean, they have come up with some ridiculous versions of the Aquanaut Luce in the near past. Cloud Ken was saying they need more journey models. What does it mean, journey models? For women, say codes or offshores, too small. I didn't quite get what you're saying, Cloud Ken. Maybe I'm experiencing a little bit of a brain fart, but if you could rephrase it, because I'm kind of missing the point there. It has like 3 parts that I need to interpret on my own, and it doesn't really come together for me. So if I would love it if you could rephrase it so I understand it. CloudCan says the Openwork looks ugly in my opinion. Respect, I think it's probably one of the best looking watches ever made by AP, in my opinion. Hit the like button in the meantime. I really, really, really appreciate it. And it really does help. It makes a big difference for a small channel like this to have just a handful of more likes. It's the difference between night and day. So please, please do give that extra push, extra boost. So these are the new variations of the 15407, one in black ceramic, and specifically with those pink gold accents that we were talking about here. Both the chapter ring and the Openworked movement itself is rendered in hues of pink gold, which also plays with the color, the material of the hexagonal bolts as well, which is in fact 18 karat pink gold. The hands, the hour, minutes, and the sweep center seconds hands are rendered in this blackened fashion, and so are the abbreviated hour markers, which are filled with the same luminous material that inlays the hour and minute hand. I love it. I just love that balance wheel. That's been a feature also in terms of the aesthetic of the newly designed caliber 7121 that goes into the jumbo nowadays. I love the aesthetic of that balance bridge, the Openworked balance bridge. It's a great look, and I love the way AP does Openworked. I mean, because I have an old man's brain, I like it even more in the traditional, hand engraved kind of floral design way that AP used to do these things, as in this guy, for example. And probably, that being said, the interior angles on a piece like this from the 80s is obviously much finer and much more exquisitely and expertly done than the modern ones. But when it comes to the aesthetic of the Royal Oak, I think there's something really appealing about the more industrial lines that are conveyed by this particular approach to the Openworked. So this is the black ceramic version. I think it looks very striking with that interplay between the black ceramic tones and the pink gold hues, black ceramic tones of the case and the bracelet, and the pink gold hues of the accents, as well as the Openwork dial. This is the stainless steel version. By the way, the black ceramic one is actually a limited edition, apparently, which will only be released in 150 examples. The price point for that is strictly in six figures, 1,100 in US dollars, 101, 100. And you see the Reho 2 is fitting that color scheme, polished. The innards and the accents of the stainless steel version very much mirrors the black ceramic that we were just looking at. In fact, the whole design mirrors it, since here the dial furniture as well as the hands are rhodium plated and play well with the silvery tones of the stainless steel case and the bracelets. The stainless steel version is priced at 76,400, which, as far as I know, is no different than the version that's been in the catalog, that combines a blackened Openworked dial with a stainless steel case. I think that's the same price, 76,400 US dollars. And then there's the yellow gold version, which I believe was not previously presented, or represented rather, in the lineup. And that has an interplay between the yellow gold tones of the case and the more industrial black tones of the movement as well as the open-worked dial. CloudCan says the black open-worked looks better, in my opinion. You know, I don't disagree. Look, I have been kind of, in a way, in a joking way, please don't take it too seriously. I can be delusional in certain moments, but I'm not going to really say this. But jokingly, I want to say that I was the one who at least predicted the salmon dial trend. I find enormous appeal in having, pink, copper tones, salmon accented elements on the face of the watch with a white metal case. But that to me always inspires something more elegant, dressier. In this case, I think I completely agree with CloudCan. I like the version of this that currently exists in the catalog, that I hope is not eliminated. That's not what I've heard, don't take me wrong. But, it wouldn't be the first time that they would discontinue a precursor, a similar looking model when they introduce something new. But speaking of that, quote unquote, industrial approach to a skeletonized or open-work dial, as distinct from that classical floral motifs, hand engraved details, I do think this looks much better. In a Royal Oak case, this blackened movement and openwork dial aesthetic, I think, works better. Even though I do usually love, aesthetically speaking, anything that combines a white metal with copper toned accents. So I love how this looks, but if I were given the option between two variations of the 15407 in stainless steel, I would go for the one with the black innards as well. So can't blame Cloud Ken for saying that. MCM says it's a pass, in my opinion, even at retail. Respect. If I were rolling at that level, if I could spend without thinking 75,000 in a single watch, I think this would be one of the first watches that I would go to in stainless steel with the black dial. But I respect your opinion, MCM. I think you have great taste and usually also a great feeling for figuring out these kinds of details. But you're not wrong. It is a significant markup, right? Because at the end of the day, I mean, what is this, aesthetically speaking? With it's a 41 millimeter stainless steel Royal Oak with an Openworked dial, right? Yes, the double balance wheel is a nice trick up its sleeve, but AP is not the first brand, not the only brand either, that has these kinds of tricks, both as examples in technical innovation, but also as some measure of improving the precision and stability of a caliber. We were just talking about Moza earlier, right? Moza has been using the double hairspring as the Straumann double hairspring as a selling point for their movements for quite some time. And it's not the same thing, don't take me wrong, but it is basically, again, an interesting and technically fascinating solution to the same problem. So all of that being said, does this watch really justify its retail price? MCM perhaps has a point. Does it really excite me as an Openworked version of the Royal Oak, being such a huge fanboy of Royal Oaks? Absolutely. I think the yellow gold version is the most boring, in my humble opinion. It is also priced at the same point as the black ceramic version we have just looked at, although it is not a limited run. The black ceramic version, as mentioned, is a limited edition of 150 examples, priced at $101,100 US, and that is also the price tag of this new yellow gold version that you are currently looking at. I think from these new variations, I like the look of the stainless steel, although I prefer the one with the black dial and movements. This is probably my favorite of the new releases. I think it's shrewd to release it as a limited edition of 150 examples. But overall, I think the 15407 ST that is already in the catalog remains my favorites, and that is this one. Cloudcan says the Salmon Openworked looks like a two-tone with the pink gold screws, the Salmon steel one. I don't have a problem with that. But then again, you know, I'm a fan of two-tone watches, so you know, I don't mind that it actually looks that way. Do they have it kind of next to each other on the lists here? Yeah. Yeah, so it's not discontinued. Honestly, I think of all the variations they have right now, the stainless steel with the black PVD Openworked dial and movements is the best looking one, in my opinion. I don't like the tricked out versions and the frosted gold treatments and the gem sets, whatever. I think the black ceramic limited edition looks better than the blacked out version. By the way, the ceramic one carries a different reference number. I'm sorry for misleading you. Instead of 15407, it's 15416 for the ceramic one. But that reference number holds for the yellow gold and previously existing pink gold versions as well. Yeah, I think the 15416 CE limited run of 150 examples is probably the more exciting new release / variation, and 15407 with the black PVD innards is still my overall favorites, even though MCM's point that it might not necessarily justify the price point even at retail. CloudCan says, you're right, there's way too many Openworked versions now. Yeah, I was simply agreeing with Horology Ancien's viewpoint there, who is, you know, one of the most, I think, important and influential collectors, especially of Patek, but it's a father and son duo. They really collect a lot of the big brands, including AP, including Rolex, including Omega. They kind of hold Patek over and above any other brand. They do have a very specific relationship with and allegiance to Patek Philippe, both in terms of the historical legacy of the brand and even for current pieces. But as you can see, they have a lot of interesting Rolex pieces, so many different variations of the Royal Oak, a lot of different Omega Speedmasters. Even some new Longines there, Cartier, of course, the remaster that we were just talking about, with the first series that they came up with in 2020 with the inauguration of the Musée Atelier. Yeah, I would highly recommend anyone to follow Horology Ancienne. Great duo of collectors. The posts usually are very carefully prepared, well written, thoughtfully written, something you can learn from. It's great. Dr. Bob, welcome back. Cheeseburgers are good. I eat some fake ones once every so often. You know, I'm like Joey Chestnut, American legend, a vegan. Yeah, there's the link to Horology Ancienne. By the way, I think that is our very last stretch tonight. I'm not going to go for very long. If you have any final questions, remarks, suggestions, feel free to send them in the chat. If you want to support the channel, of course, you can do that in the form of a super chat. YouTube provides that option for you. The channel memberships are a great option, with an ever-expanding archive of exclusive content, which I will have hopefully time to enrich over the coming weeks. But there are about 3 new videos that become part of that archive every Monday. So stay tuned for that. And I think that's a very good value proposition, because a lot of the videos that are in that archive are pointers towards finding different kinds of watches, developing your own tastes, and knowing where to look for to, in fact, look for pieces that may have fallen under the radar, that may not necessarily belong to the current trends. And ultimately, it's all with a view to get you the best value for your hard-earned money. And I think I do that well in this channel, and the exclusive content only enhances that. So those are the options, the super chats, super stickers, etc., that YouTube allows you. Just a little bit more shilling before I turn in for the night. If that's not attractive to you, or if you want to support the channel in other ways, The links are provided directly in the YouTube video description. If nothing else, you can always, of course, just simply hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Share it with other watch collectors and enthusiasts. And help us expand the community. So these live streams on a regular basis are more of an event, more of a community affair, more of a conversation than simply me, myself, and I monotonously talking for 4 hours and end on watches that I deeply care about, that I feel really passionately. But it's always great to find resonance with you guys in the community. CloudCan, thank you for that super sticker. He says, I like hearing Lord say Breguet. You know, there's also a controversy regarding that, because there's no accent on the E in the that first A. Some people say it should be properly pronounced Breguet. I think that's, even for me, that's way too affectatious. So I say Breguet. But yeah, there you go. I said it a few more times for good measure. Joy Chestnut may be simply vegan for pay, but you know, he was banned from the Nathan's hot dog eating competition on July 4th in Coney Island because he's sponsored by Impossible Foods, the makers of the Impossible Burger, and they have basically collaborated with this on this special cookout where Joy Chestnut fundraised for a U.S. military nonprofit called Operation Homefront and donated $106,000. Eating fake hot dogs. I mean, that's kind of, you know, I think even for non-vegans, you guys, you all know how sausage is made. That's one platform, that's one conduit where one can easily transition to, easily accommodate a vegan option, because what makes a proper Wurst is not something all that appetizing to begin with. No, I was trying to put my non-vegan hat on and try to convince you guys. But yes, I don't know whether Joy Chestnut is actually a fully committed vegan, but he's certainly sponsored by Impossible Foods, plant-based meat alternative brand, and that's his shtick now. So Dr. Bob gave up on Joy Chestnut accordingly. Team Kobayashi from now on for me. I think Kobayashi retired already, no? Okay, before we close, since we're on the Instagram already, I'm just going to share a few pieces that I posted on Instagram over the last few days. Vicky Piria, Italian race car driver and sports broadcaster. This is she at the Monaco GP. I think she's also an IWC ambassador, so that might change your view on this particular thing, but I think she really wears the IWC Pilots Chrono 41 Top Gun Mojave Desert Edition here very well in what is a quasi monochromatic outfit as well. Color coordination on point. One of my favorite living writers, David Mamet, famous playwright that you might know through Glengarry Glen Ross, if nothing else. He's wearing Rolex Explorer 2 from the 5-digit generation, reference 16570 with the black dial. Please don't forget to hit the like button. Noriega, rapper and host of Drink Champs, who was hosting the blue carpets at the BET Awards, was wearing the new reference 5980 line 60G, the white gold Nautilus flyback chronograph on that denim strap. I think the watch is cool. The strap, not so much. I'm not a huge fan. Our lovely friend Mookie has, I believe, called it the jorts strap. Very appropriate name for it. I think it's a little too much, but I like the white gold version, and obviously that particular dial color with the Nautilus flyback chronograph. David Beckham was watching Wimbledon. Of course, he was also fulfilling his duties as the Tudor watch ambassador, wearing the Aussie Expat Special, the Pelagos FXD, with the black dial, red writing. Another, of course, stylish gentleman, Larry David of Seinfeld and Curb Your Enthusiasm fame. He wears this watch that also appeared pretty frequently and even served the plot on a couple of episodes in Curb Your Enthusiasm, and it is Baume et Mercier Hampton with salmon tinted champagne dial, speaking to our earlier point in combining white metals with salmon dials. I think this is a beautiful example with the curved rectangular case, which is clearly Art Deco inspired. I think it's a very cool watch. I believe it's quartz powered, and examples of this watch I think can be reliably found for about $500 on the secondary market. So it could be an interesting watch to play around with, to wear as the Larry David special. So quite interesting. I've always thought and even hoped that it would be some kind of Patek Gondolo, but the photographic evidence never lies. I don't know if you guys have been watching the European Championships or the Copa America for that matter. It's a great summer for football fans. Spain just knocked out Germany, which meant that the legendary deep-lying playmaker Toni Kroos just retired. He had previously announced that he was going to retire at the conclusion of this tournament, having already given up on club football after successfully winning both La Liga and the Champions League this year with Real Madrid. Here he is wearing A reference 26740 AP Royal Oak offshore chronograph in stainless steel with the Navy Mega Tapisserie dial, an earlier iteration of the Royal Oak offshore chronograph, distinguished by those Arabic numerals. The rubber strap also very nicely matches the Mega Tapisserie dial. Roger Federer was also at Wimbledon, and as the dependable Rolex ambassador, he was in fact wearing the Wimbledon dial. Dr. Bob says, I made Estonian blood sausage before. You don't want to know. You really don't want to know how the sausage gets made. Jilden says, beyond better than impossible. I don't like either of them, honestly. I don't eat plant-based meat very often. I'm more of a vegetable kind of guy. Lentils, legumes, nuts, peanut butter, fruits, vegetables. He was wearing the Datejust 41 with the Wimbledon dial. Slightly unorthodox choice because he is in fact wearing a combination of the oyster bracelet with the smooth bezel. I think when it comes to this so-called Wimbledon dial, the slate gray with green and gold accents, the two-tone really brings the most out of it. I usually prefer Datejusts to combine a fluted bezel with the Jubilee bracelets, but hey, we are talking about His Highness Royal Roger Federer. So if His Excellency has done it this way, we have to somehow oblige. And finally, earlier Croatian player Donna Vekic made it to the quarterfinal for the first time in Wimbledon. And she famously wears an Épée Jaune Élégante, which is usually one of the models that is gem set, in this case, set with 38 brilliant cut diamonds on the two flanks of the watch. Of course, this is the 40 millimeter titanium case mounted here on the orange rubber strap. Again, feel free to follow me on YouTube as well, on Instagram as well, and feel free to drop some likes on the posts once every so often. That would also be deeply appreciated. Once again, folks, this is more or less the end of our broadcast. I think we had a wonderful conversation tonight. I covered mostly some of the recent releases by Audemars Piguet, but I had a lot of support in the form of inquiries, reactions, questions from the chat. I really appreciate all of you. Thank you for your support and presence. Please hit the like button on the way out if you haven't done so already. It really, really does help. And all of you who have given to the channel in the form of super chats and super stickers, Cloudcan, Jilden, MCM, Nate Dogg, and Ali Reza, I really, really appreciate you guys. Bezels, who gifted a channel membership, which went to Nate Dogg. I really appreciate you as well. Everyone else who has shared an opinion, dropped some knowledge, asked a question, or just contributed some banter in the chat. I appreciate you all. Subscribe if you haven't. Share the link with friends and fellow collectors. Help us expand the community. I will most certainly see you in the next one. Until then, stay safe, stay healthy, wear and enjoy your watches, preferably on a cheap and nasty NATO strap. Take care, guys.